My wife filed for divorce while I was abroad and claimed everything. But she missed one thing. 6 months on an offshore oil rig changes a man. The isolation, the constant drone of machinery, the endless horizon of water. It's a peculiar existence that requires a certain temperament. For 15 years, I'd embraced this life, working 3 months on, 1 month off, building what I believed was financial security for Brooke and me. We had no children, her choice, not mine, which simplified the arrangement. I remember precisely when I learned about Brooke's actions. It was 4:17 p.m. on a Thursday when I received the email from my bank regarding unusual account activity. Unusual was an understatement. Our joint accounts had been systematically emptied over the previous 2 weeks, with transfers directed to accounts I didn't recognize. My first instinct was identity theft. I placed a satellite call to the bank's fraud department, only to discover that the transfers had been authorized by Brooke. The customer service representative hesitated when I identified myself, then directed me to legal services. That's when I knew. The divorce papers arrived via courier the following morning. Clinical and efficient, just like Brooke. She had always been meticulous in her professional life as a corporate attorney, and apparently, she applied the same precision to dismantling our marriage. I sat on the edge of my bunk, document in hand, and experienced something unexpected. A profound sense of clarity. 15 years together, and this was her response to the distance my work had created. Not a conversation, not therapy, just a strategic dissolution executed while I was 200 miles offshore, unable to contest her actions in real time. "Mitchell, you've got a call from the mainland," shouted Ramirez, one of the rig supervisors. It was my longtime friend and financial advisor, Alan Reeves. "Harrison, I've been trying to reach you for days," Alan said, his voice tense. "Brooke contacted me last week requesting information about all your accounts." "What did you tell her?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Only what she had legal access to," Alan replied. "The joint accounts, the property holdings you've documented with her. Nothing about the separate investment portfolio." I closed my eyes, feeling the first moment of relief since opening that email. "Thank you, Alan. Harrison, you need to know. She's been planning this for months. The house transfer was initiated nearly 8 weeks ago. She's selling off assets. The vacation property in Aspen, the boat, your art collection." I listened as Alan detailed the systematic dismantling of 15 years of married life. Brooke had been thorough, leveraging her legal expertise to maximum advantage. She knew exactly when I would be most vulnerable. 3 months into a 6-month special assignment, with limited communication and no ability to return stateside without breaching my contract. "What do you want to do?" Alan finally asked. I considered my options with the same methodical analysis I applied to engineering problems on the rig. Emotional responses solved nothing. Strategic thinking was required. "Nothing," I replied. "For now, we observe. Harrison, she's taking everything." "Not everything, Alan. She missed something significant. 7 years earlier, I had established a separate investment account following a substantial inheritance from my grandfather. Brooke, dismissive of my family's modest background, had shown little interest in what she called sentimental money. That sentimental money had grown to just over $2 million through careful investment in emerging technology stocks and real estate trusts. "The Mitchell portfolio," I said. "How's it performing?" "Up 22% this quarter," Alan responded. "Harrison, that's your safety net. Are you sure you don't want to contest any of this?" "I'm certain," I replied. "Sometimes, Alan, the most powerful position is to allow your opponent to believe they've won completely." As I ended the call, I looked out at the endless expanse of ocean. For 15 years, I had believed Brooke and I were building something meaningful together. Now I understood we had been constructing entirely different realities. Hers was now clear to me. Mine was about to become clear to her. The remaining 3 months on the rig tested my composure like nothing in my professional life ever had. Each day brought new notifications of Brooke's methodical dismantling of our shared life. The vacation home in Aspen sold. The vintage Porsche I'd restored over countless weekends. Gone. the art collection we'd carefully curated during our travels, dispersed to various buyers. I maintained what my colleagues on the rig came to call an unnerving calm. Ramirez finally confronted me in the mess hall after watching me review another email from my attorney. "Mitchell, you're either the most controlled man I've ever met or you're about to snap spectacularly," he said, sliding a cup of coffee across the table. "Either way, you might want to talk to someone." I looked up from my tablet. "What would you do, Ramirez, if you discovered that while you were out here doing this job, someone was systematically erasing your life back home?" He considered this. "Probably something that would land me in jail." "That's the difference between reaction and response," I said. "Reaction serves the moment. Response serves the future." "That's some philosophical bullshit right there," Ramirez laughed. "But whatever keeps you sane." What kept me sane was the daily investment reports from Alan. While Brooke liquidated our visible assets, the Mitchell portfolio continued its steady growth. The technology stocks I'd selected years earlier were now part of the artificial intelligence boom. The real estate investments had appreciated significantly in key markets. Every dollar Brooke transferred out of our joint accounts was matched by market gains she knew nothing about. My attorney, Daniel Foster, was initially confused by my instructions. "You want to offer no contest to any of her demands?" he asked during one of our satellite calls. "Correct," I confirmed. "Draft the responses as requested, acknowledge her terms, and process everything with minimal delay." "Harrison, I've known you for 20 years, Daniel said. "This isn't like you. She's taking advantage of your absence to secure everything." "Not everything, Daniel. And sometimes, what people believe they've secured isn't what matters most." "You're planning something," he observed. "I'm responding strategically," I corrected. "There's a difference." The distinction was important to me. This wasn't about revenge, a concept I'd always found unproductive. This was about allowing natural consequences to unfold while protecting what I had built independently. If Brooke believed our joint assets represented the entirety of our financial picture, that was a failure of due diligence on her part. As a corporate attorney, she should have known better. I used the remaining time on the rig to plan my return carefully. While Brooke believed I would be returning to financial devastation, I was quietly arranging the foundation for my post-divorce life. Alan helped me identify a property in our neighborhood, a modernist residence 3 streets over from our former home, with better views of the coastline and more advanced sustainable features than our former house. "It's significantly over market value," Alan warned. "Is it within the Mitchell portfolio's capacity?" I asked. "Easily, but..." "Then proceed with the purchase," I instructed. "Cash offer. Expedited closing. Scheduled for the day after my return." The night before we were scheduled to return to shore, Ramirez found me on the observation deck, watching a distant electrical storm illuminate the horizon. "Ready to go back and face the music?" he asked, joining me at the railing. "I'm looking forward to it," I replied honestly. "You're a strange one, Mitchell," he said, "but I have a feeling your ex has no idea what's coming." "That's the interesting part," I told him. "Nothing is coming for her. She's already secured exactly what she pursued. I'm simply proceeding with my life." "Cold," he observed. "Precise," I corrected. "There's a difference. After 6 months at sea, the sensory experience of returning to land is always disorienting. The stillness of solid ground, the variety of sounds, the range of scents. It all creates a peculiar form of reverse culture shock. This time, however, the psychological adjustment was compounded by returning to a life that had been systematically dismantled in my absence. I checked into an executive extended stay hotel that afternoon. Daniel had arranged a meeting with Brooke and her attorney for the following morning, a formality to sign the final divorce papers. The proceeding had moved with remarkable efficiency, facilitated by my lack of contest to any of her demands. Alan met me for dinner that evening, bringing the final documents for the house purchase and an update on the Mitchell portfolio. "Everything's set for tomorrow," he confirmed, sliding a folder across the table. "The wire transfer has been approved, and the sellers have signed all the closing documents." Once you sign these, the property is yours. I reviewed the paperwork methodically, noting that Alan had structured the purchase through an LLC, providing an additional layer of privacy. The portfolio statements are in the back, Alan added. Current value is $2.37 million. Brooke hasn't made any inquiries about additional accounts or investments throughout this entire process. She believes she's been thorough, I observed. In her professional world, the documentation she's reviewed would represent the complete financial picture. Her attorney should have pressed harder, Alan noted. Her attorney followed her instructions, I countered. Brooke has always been confident in her own assessment. This served her well in corporate law. In personal matters, it's proven to be a limitation. The following morning, I dressed with particular care, selecting a bespoke suit I had commissioned before this last offshore assignment. As I adjusted my tie in the hotel mirror, I recognized this attention to presentation wasn't vanity but precision. Today marked the formal conclusion of 15 years of my life. Such transitions warranted acknowledgement. The law offices of Caldwell and Barnes occupied the 32nd floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass, steel, and calculated intimidation. I arrived 10 minutes early, as was my habit. The receptionist's expression revealed a momentary surprise at my composed demeanor before she led me to a conference room where Daniel was already waiting. "You look surprisingly well for a man about to lose half of everything," he observed. "Perspective, Daniel," I replied. "I'm not losing half of everything. I'm gaining complete autonomy over what matters most." Brooke arrived precisely on schedule, accompanied by her attorney, Elizabeth Caldwell, a founding partner known for aggressive divorce settlements. Brooke had evidently planned this alliance well in advance of filing. The moment Brooke entered the room, I recognized something had changed. She had always been attractive in a polished, deliberate way. Now there was a triumphant glow about her, the satisfaction of a strategy executed precisely as planned. She wore a designer suit I hadn't seen before, accessorized with jewelry that made a statement about her perceived victory. Our eyes met briefly. I offered a small, professional nod. Her expression flickered with momentary confusion at my composure before she took her seat across the table. "Let's proceed efficiently," Elizabeth Caldwell began, arranging documents with practiced precision. "As agreed, Mr. Mitchell has accepted all terms as stipulated in the settlement agreement. The family residence has been transferred to Mrs. Mitchell's name. All joint accounts have been appropriately distributed, and the division of personal property has been executed according to the itemized list submitted to the court." Daniel turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have any questions or concerns before signing?" "No questions," I replied. "The documentation is clear and aligned with our discussions." Brooke watched me carefully, perhaps waiting for some indication of resentment or defeat. I simply reviewed each page before signing, the same methodical process I applied to engineering reports on the rig. When the final signature was applied, Elizabeth Caldwell gathered the documents with a satisfied expression. "Congratulations, Brooke. Everything is now formalized." Brooke's eyes remained on me. "You're being remarkably accommodating, Harrison. It's unexpected." It was the first time she had directly addressed me since I'd returned. "I've always respected efficiency," I replied. "You identified what you wanted and pursued it systematically. That warrants acknowledgement." A slight furrow appeared between her brows. This wasn't the response she had anticipated. As we rose to conclude the meeting, Daniel handed me another folder. "The final documentation we discussed," he said meaningfully. I accepted it with a nod, then extended my hand to Elizabeth Caldwell. "Thank you for your professionalism throughout this process." I turned to Brooke. For 15 years, this woman had been the center of my life, or so I had believed. Now, looking at her, I recognized that perhaps she never had been. We had occupied the same spaces but lived in different realities. "I wish you well, Brooke," I said simply. "That's it?" she asked, a note of disbelief in her voice. "6 months ago, you left for that rig thinking everything was fine between us. You're not even going to ask why." I considered her question carefully. "The why is evident in your actions. You wanted a different life than the one we had built." You've now secured it. Further discussion would be redundant. As I turned to leave, she called after me. Where will you even go, Harrison? What will you do? I paused at the door. I'll do what I've always done, Brooke. I'll continue building. The purchase of the new house was finalized by noon. By 3 o'clock, I had arranged for delivery of essential furnishings. A precise selection focusing on functionality and comfort rather than status or display. The property itself made a sufficient statement. 5,200 square feet of architectural innovation on a prime half-acre lot with unobstructed coastline views. Alan met me there late that afternoon, bringing the final documentation and a bottle of 30-year-old scotch. Expensive celebration for a newly divorced man, I observed as he poured 2 glasses. This isn't a celebration of divorce, Alan corrected. It's acknowledgement of foresight. We stood on the expansive deck overlooking the Pacific. 3 streets away, barely visible through a line of mature cypress trees, was the red-tiled roof of the house Brooke had secured in the settlement. When will she notice? Alan asked. That depends on her social connections, I replied. Real estate transactions of this size generate conversation in certain circles. I estimate between 3 days and 2 weeks. Alan's prediction proved more accurate than mine. The following evening, as I was unpacking my personal library in the new study, the security system announced a visitor at the gate. The video monitor showed Brooke's BMW idling in the circular drive. I authorized entry and went to meet her at the front door. She emerged from her car with the stunned expression of someone encountering a fundamental error in their calculations. What is this? She demanded, gesturing to the house. Real estate investment, I replied calmly. Would you like to come in? Her composure faltered momentarily before her attorney's training reasserted itself. She followed me into the grand foyer, her eyes cataloging details with professional assessment. Elizabeth said you didn't disclose any additional assets, she finally stated. I disclosed everything that was legally required, I corrected. The joint accounts, the shared property, the visible investments, everything you had documentation for and legal claim to. And this? She demanded, her gesture encompassing the house. This was purchased yesterday, I explained, with funds from an investment account established 7 years ago. The Mitchell portfolio. Recognition flickered across her features. Your grandfather's inheritance. The sentimental money, as you called it, I confirmed. Initially, yes, subsequently grown through strategic investment decisions over the past 7 years. She moved to the wall of windows overlooking the ocean view, superior to the one from our former home. How much? She asked, her back to me. The house? Just under $4 million. She turned. The portfolio, currently valued at approximately $2.4 million, minus the house purchase. The calculation was visible in her expression, the recognition of what she had overlooked, what her thorough legal strategy had failed to capture. You never mentioned these investments, she accused. You never asked, I replied simply. In 15 years of marriage, our financial discussions focused exclusively on the joint accounts, the properties you selected, the visible assets you valued. The Mitchell portfolio was documented in our tax filings annually, though admittedly in the supplemental sections you typically delegated to your assistant for review. She absorbed this with the careful control of someone accustomed to negotiating from positions of authority. I could contest the divorce settlement on grounds of incomplete disclosure. You could, I acknowledged, though the documentation trail is quite clear. The investments were disclosed in our tax filings. The account was established with inherited funds prior to their significant appreciation, and most importantly, you signed an acknowledgement during the proceedings that you had reviewed all financial documents to your satisfaction. The strategic error was evident in her expression. In her certainty of victory, she had permitted a critical oversight. Why didn't you fight? She asked finally. Why let me take everything that you thought I could see? I considered her question carefully, recognizing it contained the essence of what separated our perspectives throughout our marriage. Fighting suggests opposition to an outcome, I explained. I wasn't opposed to your departure from my life, Brooke. Once your intentions became clear, I simply ensured I had a foundation to continue building mine. She moved toward the door, then paused. Did you know? Before this assignment? Did you suspect I was planning this? No, I answered honestly. I believed we had constructed a life that held value for both of us. I was incorrect in that assessment. She nodded once, a gesture that acknowledged the response without accepting its implications. At the door, she turned back. What now, Harrison? Now? I considered the question. I believe traditional protocol suggests I send a housewarming announcement. The following morning, I had my assistant deliver a simple cream-colored envelope to our former address. Inside was a card with a single line, "You forgot to ask about my investments." It wasn't meant as cruelty or triumph, merely as acknowledgement of a fact that a corporate attorney of Brooks' caliber should have recognized. Due diligence matters in professional contexts and personal ones. Some lessons must be experienced to be fully understood. As for me, I've scheduled a meeting with my company's executive team next week. After 15 years of offshore engineering, I'm proposing a transition to operations management, a position that would keep me onshore permanently. Not because of what happened with Brooke, but because the offshore experience has provided all the perspective I require. Sometimes, distance is necessary to see things clearly. Sometimes, what appears to be loss is merely clearing ground for more suitable construction. And sometimes, the most valuable assets are the ones others fail to recognize until it's too late to acquire them.